Welcome to Season 4 of UX Banter, your portal to insightful conversations with design illuminaries. We are back with even more engaging discussions with design leaders, delving into their experiences and inspirations. Get ready for fresh insights as we explore the latest trends and challenges in the industry. With me, your host, Dushyant Kanungo.
This podcast is presented by Galaxy UX Studio and powered by Galaxy Weblinks, an Inc. 5000 organization. Hello everyone, welcome to the new episode of the UX Banter podcast. I am Dushyant Kanungo, and today we are delighted to have a special guest joining us from all the way from Portland, Oregon. Over 15 years of experience in design. She holds the role of VP of UX and Design at Roost, which is a cutting-edge deposit and compliance management platform for properties. Recognized for her remarkable ability to simplify complex technologies into simple and intuitive products, let's extend a warm welcome to the design maestro herself, Verne Lindner.
Thank you. That was quite an introduction.
Welcome to the show. You deserve it 100%.
Thank you. I should say that I went to Harvard for graduate school, and part of my journey of becoming a designer was that I stayed for a year and then I left. So I have not actually graduated from there. I realized I wanted to be a designer rather than an academic.
But I think first to drop out of Harvard, you should be intelligent enough to get into Harvard. And I think that was
right. And I will say that, like, when I did leave, many people questioned the intelligence of that decision, including me, many times over the years when I thought, why am I doing this job? I could be back at school.
Well, the brightest of the mind in the industry today, they are dropped out from the biggest of the institutions like Steve Jobs, or, as the first name, people just say that, he dropped out. And first, you are forgetting the fact that he got in, and then you talk about that how you dropped off. Now, there are two complete scenarios that people don't generally consider, and because sometimes if it is not a fit, it's not a fit. You cannot just push through with some sort of unhappy arrangement which is not working out for you. I think personal decision and the freedom of choice always should play before any social pressure that people from all the directions that come to you. I mean, even though we are interviewing you, I can just tell you that personally, even still, I have hard time explaining to my parents that what I do for a living. But
yeah, my parents never understood.
All right. So with that, talking about parents, can you please guide us through your background, your journey in the career of design, education and the academia that you weren't a part of, and then how you became the design leader that you are?
Well, I came from a working class family. So my father was a refugee. So I was first generation American on his side and third on my mother's. So I was the first one in our immediate family to go to college. That kind of like immigrant second generation story. So being in college and learning, like, it was very clear that felt like that's the key out of where we are today. And that's going to be how I'm going to get anywhere I want to go. And I was also lucky because I love learning. Like, my favorite thing is just following something that seems kind of interesting, just like taking the time and following the path until you sort of get all of your questions answered around it to the extent that you can. So I went to college. I wasn't clear on like what I wanted to be. And, there's so many kids who like enter college and know right off the bat, I want to do this, I want to do that. And that's great. But I had no clue. So I thought, well, I'm just going to do a general education. And I would say, like, for creatives and designers, like that might be, a really great path, because what I learned in the years later is that that 4 years of being in college and a year in graduate school, it's the only time in my life that I've ever had the time to just read for the sake of reading, and study things that had no discernible practical application. And when you get out in the world and you're, in the middle of your career, like, that time is not going to come again. So I would say, like, anybody who's thinking like, wow, I'm studying English literature, in my case, French literature, what am I doing with my time? Like, you're doing something incredibly valuable. You're learning how to think and appreciate and just absorb, like, patterns, and like the things that you're going to find inspire you the most as you go through the rest of your journey in life.
So with all the experience that you had with the academia and all the education that you got, how did you become a designer? I mean, what was your early career look like?
Before I went to school, I had fallen in love with calligraphy and lettering. I mean, really fell in love with it. And I was obsessed with it to the point where it was like when I wasn't doing anything else, I was copying old manuscripts just to get the patterns down and understand the lettering. So when I left school, I was lucky enough to find a master calligrapher who would take me as a student. And I got good enough to be a professional at it, and I did that for a while. And then out of that, you can't really make a living at it, or at least I couldn't, not enough so that I could support myself, in a reasonable and consistent manner. So I started doing illustration, and then, like, I think for a lot of people who go on sort of their own path towards design rather than like coming through the academy for design, people offer you jobs, and you just take them and you learn as you go. And so I went from calligraphy to illustration to graphic design to web design to application design, and then gradually, like, that naturally slid into more of the problems that I was being asked to solve really were around UX. And that was, and then by the time I started doing that, I would say that's when you started hearing people use the term UX. Like, very few people seemed to, outside the discipline, knew what it was. But at that point, there was enough out there that you could find conferences and books and, places to learn pretty quickly.
Do you know there is another similarity that you have with Steve Jobs?
I would like to think that I yeah, because I know his great love of calligraphy, right?
He did, I think, a course in typography and typesetting. And that was the point when they were actually designing the fonts for Mac OS. They actually used that skill to remove the monospace fonts, and then they moved into the new generation and they introduced Helvetica into the system. And that is how the entire typography industry and the fonts, they actually came in to the modern day computing. So
right.
There you are.
Same story. Yeah. And I love that story, and like, if you think about just how beautiful Apple products are, and like how they've always been just aesthetically pleasing, like to such a great extent, like so much better than any of the competition, and you tie that back to, like, he was a liberal arts major, and he focused on like learning how to think and understanding aesthetics and, organization and order, and, paid off.
So when you are now into UX, you work with a lot of startups, and there is another ecosystem that you are dealing with right now. How much your journey from childhood to your parental background and your parents' influence, your friends, the uneven journey at the academia, how does that influence everything or anything that you do today? And in what is the quantum of it?
Well, I think the biggest thing, and I found this to be true of other designers I've met, other UX folks, is if you're fairly self-reliant and you are sort of maybe relying on your wits or your own curiosity and your own work ethic to take you at least along a path in life, so you can hopefully you're gradually improving whatever it is that whatever you're working within, and also like taking care of yourself, practically. I think that's it. It's like a good work ethic, and also like really liking to work. I think one of the things about this job is that this is not a 9-to-5 job.
Absolutely. Absolutely couldn't agree more. That, you have to love this job, because it's not as easy as some people might like to make it up. There are difficulties that you face. There is stress levels that actually go in, and you do get those creative blocks from time to time that, when nothing works out, and then you have to like wait a second, I need a break and I need to rethink and put myself together. But then again, that love for the craft is the only thing that brings you back. Otherwise, it is very easy to just, relegate yourself to the back seat and say, I'm going to do something else altogether.
Yeah. But the thing is, like with design, and you probably have the same experience, it's not just your job, but it's like how you see the world, how you interact with the world. I always make a joke that like a designer, like when we walk into a room, the first thing we see is even out of the corner of your eye, like there's a picture crooked on the wall. Like, can I just go straighten it?
Oh,
you know,
God. So two sayings which goes into saying that, it is about cobblers. So one is that a cobbler's eyes are always on the torn shoe. And,
exactly.
and second one is that when it comes to portfolios and we look at designers who are very senior, they don't have a proper portfolio and they always talk about that the potter eats in broken plates or something. I mean, that is somewhat on the line. Sorry, English is my second language, so I can be excused of that.
I know what you meant though. Yeah, it's absolutely true. I would say like doing a portfolio, like I haven't actually needed to use one in a few years, but I hated doing portfolios. That was the hardest thing for me.
And what I do is that I just send them, or anybody who asks, like even the organization asks, like sometimes the clients, they want to see the portfolio and say, oh, here is my YouTube. You can share my podcast and see if they like it. And that's about it. I mean, all the interview you can do or talk about your understanding of the craft is, it should be visible. If somebody is saying something, you have to, go and trust and believe on those lines. So with that, I will take you to the next round of things, which is UX Banter flashcards, which will have rapid fire questions that you have to answer to know more about you. Okay, so first question is your favorite YouTube channel.
My favorite YouTube channel? I don't have a favorite channel. Usually I just follow a link for a specific piece of content and watch that thing and don't subscribe, I have to admit.
Okay, but you don't just get to binge watch anything?
Usually I mean, I watch like, yeah, no, I don't have a channel that I go to. Like I get links to content that looks interesting, or frankly, most of what I watch on YouTube, I have to say, are demos.
All right. So books or movies?
Well, my favorite book is Moby Dick, which I've read several times, which I love it because it's huge and it's this, the story's wonderful, the writing's gorgeous, you're on a journey in many different ways. So I love that book.
All right. Next question. Your favorite mobile phone app?
That's a good question. There is an app that I use really frequently that is just phenomenally well designed. It's called Down Dog, and it's an exercise app, a yoga app. And I think they make a couple more for I don't know, other forms of exercise, just general fitness, and I think they do a meditation one. But it's a really small group who makes it, and all of the UI is just so well thought through. It's so elegant. It's so transparent. I mean, it's just the thing is a joy to use. So that's
Amazing.
probably my favorite at the moment.
All right. So are you a go out person or stay in?
Stay in.
Okay. And the favorite food or the quick comfort food that you prepare?
I guess it's probably pasta and cheese.
Very American.
Yes.
Okay. Window or aisle seat?
Oh, window.
Yeah. I get to travel a lot, and I believe that extra room that you get from the 10 centimeters, or sorry, 10 millimeters or something, it is fairly comfortable for the rest of the journey. Plus, you get the view. I mean, if not all
Yeah.
the time, but it's quite comfortable. All right. So, if you have a superpower, what would that be?
I had a superpower. Maybe it would be languages. Like, I'd have a universal translator inside my head. So whoever I'm talking to, I would understand what they were saying, and I would be able to communicate back. That would be pretty neat.
Universal translator. Are you a Trekkie?
Of course.
Ah,
I
man.
knew the universal translator. Yeah, I love Star Trek.
Cool, cool. You're really cool. I mean, well, you're already cool in my eyes, but with that, I think you will get a whole new bunch of range of followers to talk more about.
Yeah.
Okay, and your least favorite job till date?
I don't know. I mean, I've had a lot of jobs like waitress, janitor, childcare, house cleaning, along the way. Like especially when I was in my 20s, I did everything. But I liked all of it, I guess. I think I had one job in software where there was I didn't like the organization. I joined an organization without really doing enough research on, on what the culture was. And once I got it in there, I realized like, wow, this is
Not a
not
fit.
the right fit for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I had one job where I had to, well, the doctors said that quit your job. So that's how it actually went about, but that's about it.
That sounds like a really bad job.
It was. And so talk about the break. What is your favorite holiday destination?
Ooh, I don't know. I don't know that I have a specific one. I love travel in general. I think, well, I love traveling in Scotland. I love Ireland. I've been to both of them many times, and I always want to go back after I've left. Yeah, and also like I live in the Pacific Northwest, and it's gorgeous up here. So even just traveling in the immediate area, our coastline is really beautiful. It's stunning
And
at all times of the year. So
fall is
maybe
about to come and the leaves are going to change the color. And I know it is going to be beautiful, beautiful outdoors there.
yeah, it is. I mean, it's a wonderful. I'm very lucky to live up here. It's wonderful.
All right. So with that, I'm going to put these cards on the side and we'll come back to our UX discussion. So you were just talking about that being fit for the job that we are a part of the organization particularly. So you have worked with enterprise and you also work with startups. So what is your preference of work in either of the environments and scenarios?
Um, I don't have like I would say it depends on when I was in a large organization, it was because I felt like I needed to be there. Like it's a great, first of all, you're working with other people, you're collaborating, you're learning in a way that you're not going to learn when you're the only designer on a team or one of a very small crew on a team. So, and you also have the larger the organization, like the longer the timeline. So there's more time for in-depth research, right? In a startup, you're making decisions very quickly and your research is you're conducting it, but you're doing it on the fly and you're probably going to release even if you're just making your best guess. So I would say now for where I am now, I'm very much in the small startup headspace. That's where I've been the last few years, and I really it suits me very well. I think I can contribute here the best. But earlier in my career, I really liked larger organizations.
So whenever we talk about startups and the culture associated with design, they always talk about making sure the UX is the best because the bigger giants in the Silicon Valley, they always emphasis about that having the best of the design language to put across. But on the other hand, on the startups, the first thing they want is to put something out there because they need funding or they just need to be ready for the next big release because the date is announced and the pressure is always there. So, what are the common stories that or common ways that that pressure can be negated or handled?
Well, for one thing, by the time a startup has enough funding to actually bring in a designer, they usually also have a UI in place, and that UI is going to be something that was really there to test business ideas. So, like, you can't expect a whole lot from it. But what's not uncommon is that a series of contractors may have worked on it, at
Mhm.
various stages. So even though it won't be a very mature product, the code is probably going to be kind of messy. and the experience might be all over the map. So like part of your job first is to try to figure out a strategy to like, how can you bring the state that it's in into the state you want it to be in an incremental way. And that's going to mean that there's, and I don't know this is true for everybody, but certainly this is how it seems to work, have made the most sense and been the most efficient for me, is there's going to be some sort of like an interim UI. So like your first job is just trying to bring to make things a little bit more consistent and get the really illogical patterns out, and you know, and try to bring something in that feels like simple, and at least it's still in the language of that you're extracting from the existing UI, but you're getting something that at least feels like end to end, you know, maybe the same company did it. And then, you know, if after that stage, that's when you've had enough time to really sort of think through, okay, here's, you know, here's where we really need it to be. Here's how it should align with the brand or not align with the brand. Like, here are the patterns we really want, down to like, here are the font sizes we want to use. Here's, you know, here are the color shifts we want to use. Here are the, like the interaction patterns we're actually going to move to. So you're kind of thinking about that, and that's sort of, you know, the ultimate goal while you're sort of plowing through those first few months. And I would say like that's the hardest part, because most of what you're doing at the beginning feels like cleanup and excavation. And at the same time, this is a startup, so it's not like you're doing this in a vacuum. You're also putting out new features. You're working with the product team or the single product manager, whoever you have, on developing new workflows and implementing new features, and you're implementing them using a UI that's like that weird bridge UI. So where I am right now, we kind of made it, you know, we made it past that stage, and now we're into the transitioning the UI into the thing that we think is going to be, you know, very consistent and extensible and look good and do the things we want it to do. And I think like the key to that is, at least in my opinion, is focusing as much effort as possible on transitioning patterns into components. And like, obviously everybody wants to do that, right? Like, that's the big dream, is that you're going to have this wonderful
thinking
component line.
every organization wants to, that's the final stages that we would like to be in, but there's no clear path to do it. But I think the point that you mentioned here, that, you know, just making sure that picking your battles is, I think, the right way of doing it, rather than just, you know, flipping the table and saying that, you know, I'm just trashing the entire user experience or whatever you have and creating something new. You can't do that. The moment you do that, the investors will get terrified, the product owner will get scared, and then you probably have a couple of developers just rooting for you to be out of the doors. But I think if you propose a smaller plan, that, okay, let's do the buttons first. Can we do that? It's just a CSS fix, guys. Let's, you know, it's not a big deal. And they're like, all right. And then the next day you say, let's fix the header. Now, this is the font I want. And those smaller changes will bring about the large change, or the big, you know, consistency, the one thing that, you know, you can live with. And now you want to do the best out there that there can be. But now you have the standards. Now you have the proper buttons. Now you know which fonts to use. You know the color palette and the brand exercises. It's everywhere. And it also gives, I think, the QA team something to chew on, because they can now log a ticket. So, you know, this is how it evolves. And then what are your views about, you know, having a design system in place for startups? How critical do you think that is to do, or get it out of the way as soon as possible?
I just want to go back on one thing you said, which is, and because certainly I know that, you know, designers will come in and want to kind of do a wholesale change. But I would say, for me anyway, that approach doesn't make a ton of sense, not even in the practical terms, but also because when you come into an organization, like, you need some time to understand what is the vision that, you know, that the product actually has. And generally in a startup, that vision is going to come from the CEO directly. And you can't really have a lot of opinions until you learn what it is they're really trying to do. I don't know how to describe this better, but like, you have to treat it like a UX project, right? You have to really start listening to, like, why is the UI the way it is? Why are the flows the way they are? Like, it's very tempting to walk in and say, oh my God, let's just throw it away. But if you did that and you actually had the resources to do that, how do you know until you really understood the heart and soul of the organization and what its vision is? You're not going to know which decisions to make. Then it's just like your subjective likes and dislikes, and that's really not going to ultimately serve the product. So I actually think that as hard as that first era is, that first few months when you're with a startup, as difficult as that is, that's when you learn, here are the things that'll probably make sense for them, and here are the things that I might think are really nice but are not going to make sense for this organization. And then also you get a really good sense from engineering of what's actually going to be doable and what isn't. So I actually think that time is pretty worthwhile. And then in terms of the design system, I think it's critical for a few things. One, that goal of actually having a UI that's built from components that that you and the development team are maintaining and updating and building out in the way you want to. If you don't have that goal to do that, and that's not what you're driving towards, then what are you going to do? You're just coding little bits of UI hither and thither. It'll slow you down in the long run, and you're not going to get anything that's beautiful. And back to when you were talking about Steve Jobs earlier, you remember when he brought out, I think it was called the Next, and it was the company that he had when he, went after he left Apple the first time before he came back the second time. And apparently what I read was that the inside of the Next, however, whatever the configuration of all the guts were, that he was just as exacting on how they looked as he was on the outside. And people were like, but no one can see the inside. And he didn't care, it was that story, I think, is told as an example of how far out he took his love of good design. But it really resonates in a way with me, because it seems like, your UI, in order for it to be performant and in order for it to be accessible, the guts need to work. They need to be as elegant and as simple as what the user actually sees. So, and a design system, a really good, where you're actually building components and then using them, I think that's the best way to get there. So even though, you're not often going to reach that, I still feel like if you have to strive for it.
Everybody should try for a design system. I mean, any system. I mean, if you think about it, even in your life, if you do not put your routines in place, it is going to be very chaotic, because you cannot just start a new day with am I going to have coffee or tea? You should know what you're going to have in the morning. Otherwise, you're done for. And that's how you want a new feature to go out. You should know that there is component in place. You can't just redesign an app from the scratch. To begin with, it's always going to be something in line with what you are trying to build. At the same time, I mean, there's one more factor that I think you are really passionate about, is about accessibility. And I really would like to know that, what makes you so passionate about it, and what are the things that you recommend to ensure that startups do not miss out on it from the word get-go, or right from the beginning when they start the development?
Well, I got interested in accessibility when I was with an organization, and we had an enterprise client who asked us for a VPAT, and we were all like, "What's a VPAT?" And it's what it is. It's a form that an organization, that a design team or development team can fill out, that basically rates all of the aspects of your app and the elements of your app for accessibility. So it's kind of like your accessibility health report.
Mhm.
And I think they have one in Europe, but it's called something else. But in the United States, it's, I think it stands for Voluntary Product Accessibility Test, maybe. Don't bind me to that. But, when you know something by its acronym, you forget what the acronym actually means. So that's how I started learning about it. And back then, this was 10 years ago, filling out that form was difficult. All of the guidelines, there were a lot of guidelines on the web already about how to make your product accessible, and they're written by very knowledgeable people, but they were written very technically. And for a designer, a lot of it was just too hard to understand. So I figured I'd better learn about it. And so I went to conferences and read books, and ultimately ended up starting a local meetup in Portland on accessibility for designers. And we would bring speakers in who could talk to us about, product requirements, how to design for accessibility, how to develop for accessibility, how to test for accessibility. And over time, like you realize that, like, if you make your product as accessible as you can, it's also a better product for anybody who uses it. So it's, the business case for accessibility is that, one, you're not cutting out part of your market by, and essentially like disallowing certain persons not to access your app, but also you're just making a better experience all the way around. So that's kind of how I got interested in it.
Any books that you would like to recommend on the topic?
Yes. This book is called A Web for Everyone. This is a pretty old book, and it's written by Whitney Queensberry or Whitney Kesenberry. I can never pronounce that name, and Sarah Horton. And the reason that I recommend this book is it's very easy to read, and it has a lot of user stories in it. So you'll come away with some, you'll definitely get a lot of knowledge of good accessibility principles for designers and developers. But, what you get that's more important is it's almost like this is a shortcut to some user research with real users. And that'll help you, kind of relate to, like, okay, this is exactly what, this is what people need to do. This is what they want to do. And here are the blockers that they're having. And I think part of the reason that it's difficult for organizations, designers and developers, especially to make a product accessible, is because, like, you don't get to do a lot of user research with users, because it's very difficult to find and interview folks who have different types of disabilities depending on what your product is. Like, if you're working on a really technical product, you might only have a small section of your user base who has a disability, and finding that person might not be so easy. But reading user stories will get you in the mindset of, oh, okay, now I kind of understand how to think about this. I'm not just trying to, follow a guideline without really understanding what the goal is behind it. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
it does perfectly. So from the accidental use cases, I mean, the curb cut theory, which is basically, curb cut is what they call it in England, but it is basically for the wheelchair accessibility to the main road and you cross it. But the same thing can be used for baby prams and strollers and shopping trolleys and big bags to be transported. And another example is Google's voice search. Now, I thought it was a fancy feature to have, and then I saw like 3 different use cases of it. One is there is a button on the remote. So my father, he's 80 years old, and not very into tech environment. He was a teacher before he retired. Then he watches all the movies from the 50s and 60s. They're all on YouTube and available for free. And because he says those were the days when I couldn't afford a movie ticket, so I want to watch all those films. So anytime he remembers the name of the film, he just presses the button on the remote and says the name of the film, like old black and white Bollywood film. And second case is that there was a neighbor's child and he wanted to listen all the time to YouTube and something. So without realizing, I don't know how he picked it up. He just picks up the phone, presses the button and says what he wants to see on the phone. And third case was one of my nephews in a family chat group was always would send a voice note. And we weren't sure that why he was doing it, but he was young, and because it was a family group, so anybody can send all the media they wanted. But later we realized he couldn't type. so, so the best
Right.
he could do is just send a voice note. He was able to read everything which was sent there, but he was like, send a voice note to the family saying that, okay, we are out for lunch and you guys can join us and all that, all sort of things were happening. But these are the edge cases which accidentally covered by making sure your products or anything that you're putting out there is accessible.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, it's widening the definition of accessibility. Yeah, and what's interesting now is that, like, with interactions, with so we interact mostly with screens, right? But that's really changing. Right now we have voice UIs like with Alexa and Siri, and pretty soon, and we have a lot of gestural UIs, and pretty soon, like with, when Apple Vision comes out and that whole world of like 3D, a real 3D UI where your gestures are going to be in space, and you'll be able to use AI tools to allow more conversational, you know, querying for things that
Mhm.
you want to find, or compose the whole shopping experience. Like, so many things are going to change. It almost makes you wonder, like, we'll have screens for a long time. Like, we'll be working on our desktops and our laptops and phones for a long time, but like there's a whole new arena out there where voice interaction is going to it already voice interaction on phones has replaced so many of the interactions that a user would need a keyboard. Like you were talking about, your nephew using voice rather than typing. Like, if you're if you need things to be more accessible, if it's just too hard to hit the keys, or your vision impaired, like, you don't even have to deal with solving that problem on the screen as much, if you can, if you're comfortable using voice UI. So like, all of this is, you know how we react with the digital world is changing so fast again, which is exciting, that it's going to have a profound effect on, like, how you solve problems for, accessibility problems.
Well, the world is definitely going to change once the VR or the mixed reality headsets become a norm, which is definitely going to happen, because now we have an organization which has, well, a reputation of bringing about game-changing products. I mean, even though the Apple Vision Pro is going to be on the costlier side, there definitely are going to be competitors who are bringing about the same sort of the ideas that they can actually take from it, such as the external battery that was causing the biggest of the weight issues. But yeah, the world is about to change, and anything which is related to how people are interacting with the tech. There are still 1 billion people who are to join in the next 5 years now. So who
Right.
knows what's going to happen? I mean, I'm not saying that I'm old, but we have seen in our life that there are generations which are touch generations, because all they have grown up with is touch screen devices.
Yeah.
They don't even know that the time when they used to put ads on the television at 10 o'clock, the TV would say, "It's 10 p.m. Do you know where child is?" So,
Yeah, and it sort of makes you wonder, as a UX designer, trying to understand, like, digital native users, depending on the arena. Like, the kind of apps that I like to design on are used by generally, like, either a specialized group of people solving technical problems, or a wider group of people who are trying to accomplish a task, not necessarily like, not where there isn't a lot of browsing going on or interacting with content, but it's really very task driven. But when it comes to, like, applications or game design, or social media content, like the creation and consumption of that, like, I don't think I would, I think you need younger designers to take the lead there. Like, there's a basic, like, physical relationship to devices that I don't think, like, if you don't already have it, I don't know. I think it would be harder. I think it would be harder to design for apps like that. And I'm sure there would be a lot of designers saying, like, that's absolutely not true. You can, if you're a good designer, you can design for anything. But I know for me, I would think my ramp up time would be too long. I don't know how effective I could be there.
I think you absolutely have a point. And coming to the younger generation, is there any advice that you would like to give to them, that how they can actually walk the path and become the next successful design leader as you are?
Well, I think I could speak most usefully to the startup experience. And I would say the tools that we have now make it more possible for a single designer to actually, contribute and do good work in a smaller company where you're not going to have a lot of resources. And I would say, before you join a startup, make sure you understand what the problem is that they're trying to solve, and make sure that that you believe that it is a real problem that has the potential for a solution. I think a lot of times with startups, there's a great idea, but there isn't really any, like, there's no real strong sense of like, where is the business in this? And for some product designers, like, that's going to be interesting. But if you're a UX designer, you're going to have a lot to do your job. So like, you have to have a guiding light, and that guiding light is, I understand the real world problem that I think we're headed towards solving. And even though like the solution is going to change a lot, in the first year or so that you're there, the first 2 years that you're there, like, you have to have that confidence. So I'd say, like, make sure you understand that, know the group of people that you're going to be working with, a small group of people. Like, make sure that the culture makes sense for you, and then it's exciting. And also, like, it has to be, that you're going to be working an awful lot. And if you get the first two, if you know the problem and you believe there is a problem worth solving, and you like the team, you're going to have an amazing experience, because you're the only designer there. It's just going to be like, you'll be everywhere. You'll be designing workflows, UI, systems, you'll be working very closely with engineering. You'll be working closely with the founders. Like, it's a great experience. Absolutely is. And for a designer, it's, you feel at the end of the day, like, I think I did something, I made a contribution. This is good.
Amazing. So the creative satisfaction is, I think, the biggest rewards that you get after you start with a new project, or as a junior designer when you're starting off. And the moment you have that aha moment that this is not just a food delivery app, but there is always going to be a login for the restaurant, a login for the driver, a login for the business manager. And when everything comes together, then you know that, okay, this is the product. And I never thought of it this way, because it was always just one app in my phone. So just understanding the entire ecosystem, once you get the understanding of the business, that's where everything becomes way lively and realistic for anybody who is in that career.
Yeah. Well said.
All right. So with that, I thank you very much, Verne, for joining us this conversation today. I think we spoke about multiple topics and in depth. I mean, yes, there was banter, but I think we got a lot out of the conversation. I hope that it was something that our listeners are going to take away from it, that accessibility is important. Design systems take time to build up, but you never lose hope, because that is the end goal that we are striving for. Smaller chunks always play or help you, or small steps will help you run the marathon. Because if you try to run a 100-meter sprint, it is never going to work out in any big or successful product you're looking at, because longevity is really important for a designer with the product. You can't just say that, okay, 2 days design done and I'm walking off. So thank you once again, Verne.
Thank you. I really enjoyed the talk.
And I will see or meet or come back to you guys with the new episode next week. So stay tuned, and thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful